trying to get her here earlier, I'm just saying.
Patricia, you might have to do the group mute in a minute. So, oh my God, Robert Butwin, Kevin, Elizabeth, Scott, Joseph, Remco, who didn't I say hi to? Ryan. Awesome. Now, some more people coming in. But it's 10 o'clock where I sit. So let's get started. The reason I wanted to do confidence is because I was reading some books that were leading towards things that led to confidence. And it just became so obvious to me that it's a shared trait of everybody who becomes really successful. And I've been listening to a lot of podcasts about founders. And one of the things that they all share is almost a unrealistic confidence combined with a work ethic in some idea that maybe is not recognized very in the society as being a good one sometimes, but they can see ahead and they know it's going to work. And the problem is, for me, is when you're in this preneur category, entrepreneur, solopreneur category, where you're trying to manifest something. I think with solopreneurs, it's kind of create a life you want and realize a vision, not as much as a product that you can scale and fund and sell. It's a lot of the time people around us don't understand. And that can degrade the confidence because they don't get the vision because they're stuck in conventional wisdom, or they've never done anything like this before. So they just don't understand at all. They're kind of like, well, why aren't you making money yet? Or why isn't this happening? Or why aren't you getting this certain result? And until you get it, and you're an overnight success, it's not obvious. So for me, I thought, how did I get this confidence built, which is really, really strong right now? And I put out my newsletter this morning. We'll have a link in the chat to that. And I wrote down some things that I did. And one of the things I realized was I made a decision it wasn't like act until I make it. So for me, there's no fake it till you make it. It was more that I just decided I was going to do it. So back in September of 2020, I made the decision I'm going to do something totally different. So the first thing is, that's the decision. I decided to blaze my own trail instead of follow others. So I stopped thinking someone else would give me the ideas or direction or whatever. It was like, I'm going to do this from the inside out and figure out what I really want. And the second thing is, I started to open my calendar up and talk to like hundreds of people. And now I feel like I've talked to 1,000 people in the last year and a half. That made a huge impact because for me, a lot of the confidence started coming from understanding what everybody's thinking. So in other words, really, really understanding your market or partners or whatever it is. And then the third is focusing on all of what all these people told me and how they behaved as opposed to my own needs. So kind of stepping out of my own head and the want. I want this, I have to have this, I crave this. And when I get that thing, I'll be successful and I'll be happy. I got out of that thinking. That made a big difference. The other one was not hero worship gurus and those ahead of me. And I caught myself doing that, where I'd see people in particular who were really successful on social media and I'd want to be like them. And then I'd realize what a trap that is. So I stopped doing that and I started to think of myself as them. So I was like, well, I'm there. I'm not, it doesn't appear to be true yet because, it hasn't happened in that way, but I'm already there. So I started acting as if I was on that same level, and then creating my own stage. So that's what this is and some other things. So I think when you create your own stage, you have to force yourself in a way to step up to that expectation that you set of yourself. So this is what I did to pave the way, but at some point, you got to start getting a result. It's got to work. And that's like the next phase. So we've developed this approach to identify the biggest obstacle you're facing and the one major action you can take to make the biggest impact without as much struggle, without screwing around, going in circles, suffering, you know, all that. So to get to that, for me, when I figured that out, the confidence really increased. So the lack of confidence that started happening, despite all this work I did, is really a sign to say, figure out what's going on and find the thing you really have got to fix and figure out how to fix it or get on a trajectory to fix it. And the result is confidence, and confidence shows up in the marketplace in a major way. So that's my take on it. So Patricia, if you could spotlight Suzanne and I, we'll get into the conversation. So the way we do this is I'm kind of opening up on the theme of confidence, and then Suzanne and I are going to talk about her perspective on it. I'll ask some questions. I'm sure there's a lot of people in the room here who have a perspective on it or questions. So just start raising your hand, and what we'll do is bring you into the conversation. So we'll spotlight you with us in order of whoever raised your hand, and then we'll stop 10 minutes before the hour, and we're going to do, here we get that, and we're going to do small room breakouts, like 2 or 3 people, so you get to know each other. And then we'll come back to the main room. We'll stand for another 30 minutes for anybody who wants to stay. And we'll just do a general discussion. It's a good way to network and to get to know people. And it's been fun. We've been doing it for the past few meetings. It's been great. So Suzanne and I have talked quite a bit over the last 6 months or so. I think I originally met you in the corner call. Was that?
I think so, but the magic of a connection is when you forget how you even met the person, which is great.
It was Chris
I think
Giddings.
it was.
It was Chris Giddings. So if people here don't know Chris Giddings, you should know Chris Giddings. He's amazing. So I think what was great about Suzanne to me is that I don't really see myself as a coach. I see myself more as a facilitator of a process and a system. But she's a coach. You're a coach, and you've been doing it since 2009, and you're the real deal. And you know, you've talked about 10,000 hours of experience, that you've gotten all of the certifications. I think you're still doing them. So you got it goes on NLP, positive psychology, emotional fitness, high performance habits, ancient wisdom and modern tools, and created your own, what you call the tailored method. And I like that because that's how I think too. So I'm creating systems from lots of different ideas. So nothing's new, but it's reformulated in a new way. Yeah. I think that's what's really powerful, as opposed to just saying, here's the coaching methodology, now I'm going to go teach it. And you're basically then doing the same thing as everybody else, right?
Yeah. Well, I think I really believe that true coaching is custom for the person that you're sitting with. And real coaching is not an online course or an online program, but it's actually getting your clients from A to B, B to C, C to D. And I think with that in mind, standing in that took a while. I like when you mentioned, you know, looking at other people and seeing them as successful and confident and doing what I wanted to be doing, but it was against how I wanted to show up as a coach. So it was really about growing that confidence in what I do when I'm actually sitting with a client, and standing in that belief of what coaching is and what it isn't.
If you think about the precursor, when you were in that earlier phase, what was that like before you'd figured out kind of what you were doing? How did you work through that?
Well, I will say that it's not finished. It's an evolutionary process. When you do something like what we do, it's a never-ending learning process. For me, it was about doing that foundational work, and that's what I help my clients do. In order to be confident, I think there's some things that come before that. In order to be able to build rapport with people, there's work that comes before that. And it was about those foundational pieces that I was in such a hurry to skip over and get to that follower status, client
Yeah.
status,
Right.
that I rushed in the beginning of moving past those foundational things. So I think it's about clarity, really, when it comes down to it. If you're clear on your message, if you're clear on what you're offering, and you're clear on who you are and your connection to yourself here and here, confidence just automatically comes out.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense to me. I've had similar experiences with that. And when you talk about foundations, what are the principles that you like to use?
Well, number one for me is you need to feel good about yourself as a human being. And for me personally, that's about eating right, sleeping right, exercising every day. And it sounds, rudimentary, but the most successful people in the world, I mean, I'm talking the Oprahs, the Richard Bransons, all have a self-care routine
Right.
that comes before anything else, anything else. So even the Dalai Lama, I think it was him who said, on the days where he feels too busy to meditate, he does it double the amount.
Wow.
And that shifted something in me. So he has media appearances and he's going to meditate for double the amount of time because he feels busy. So I think that's the number one thing to reach your potential.
So with the self-care piece, I did that as well. And I started doing it at 5 o'clock in the morning, September 20th, 2020, and I'm still doing it. I miss occasionally, but I'm still doing it. I've got a whole routine. I pushed through the habit problem because I wanted what I thought was on the
Yes.
other side of doing it so badly. I see a lot of people that even when they have clarity and know what to do, they still don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get people through that hurdle?
Well, it's motivation, right? And motivation needs to be intrinsic. You can't look to something outside to find the motivation to take care of yourself, or even to sit down and write an email sequence, for example, which is something I struggle with. But you have to have the motivation to do it. And there's a simple motivation equation that, again, it's the foundational piece of motivation. You have to have the energy to motivate yourself. You have to believe that you're going to be successful. And there has to be no delay. So the more we delay or we procrastinate or self-sabotage, the less we take action, and then you get less motivated. So motivation can really be fueled by your belief in yourself, aka confidence. And then you're more likely to take immediate action. Okay, got to write emails. I'm going to do it right now, rather than putting it off for next week.
Yeah, that's great. And we've talked about this before. And one of the things that I've made a decision on is, and I put this in kind of our understanding of our ideal target client, and the word is highly motivated. I'm not a coach. I'm not going to help people get highly motivated. I'm not going to hold anybody's hand. You're going to come to me highly motivated already, or we can't take you into our program. We have a few slots left in our program and I'd love to fill them up, but I'd rather wait until I find people who are obviously really motivated, because otherwise it's a waste of time, because then the person may need therapy or something else that will really make an impact. How do you deal with that with your coaching practice? Do you work people through getting motivated? Or do you
Well,
just kind of say, you're not for me?
yeah, I think in the beginning, 12 years ago, I did kind of take anyone, and realized pretty quickly, because I was a coach in the health, wellness, and fitness space, that if you weren't motivated, then everything I was doing with you was more mindset and getting you to be motivated. And I didn't enjoy that as much.
Yeah.
So there was a point in my career studying positive psychology and kind of realizing grit and resilience and all those things. I think I said, well, I want to work with people more like me. I want to kind of filter out the people who haven't done the foundational pieces and work with those people who are action takers, they're motivated, and maybe they're just lacking the foundational pieces to get that clarity and get that confidence. Yeah, so it was more, once you get to a certain point in your career, you make your not to-do list, and that's
Yeah.
one of those foundational pieces for confidence. I was no longer willing to take on a client who was not going to do the work. And that becomes very obvious in the beginning of a client engagement. And now I have a way that I do it before I ever engage with a person as a client. So I can tell immediately if somebody is an action taker or not by the exchange that we have before that invitation to a coaching session.
And how do you do that? Is the series of questions or an assessment or something?
It depends on the person. Like right now, I was referred to a client and I offered her a coaching session to see if we vibed, to see if, you know, she liked my style of coaching and how I would approach things. She immediately said yes, and we scheduled it. So she got a check mark in my book. She said yes. She was
Yeah.
adventurous. She was excited about the opportunity. She's never been coached before. And then I emailed her before the session, and the email just says before our session. And she did it. She did the 2 assessments and answered the 3 questions. So then again, that's another check. That's another hell yes from me. So then all I need when she shows up to that session, do I serve her powerfully? Do I listen powerfully? Does she like the spot that we got to by the end of the session? Then typically I've done my job. She's an action taker. And I don't need to say, would you like to talk about working together? She asks me. And I love that. That feels, I think, coming from my healthcare background, having somebody ask me to work with me is so much better than me offering it. So that's kind of my 3 things that I need to check off before that person actually would become a client.
The immediate urgency of now, I think, is something I've always had, going back as far as I can think, but I've also had incredibly negative mindset loops because that's what I was taught in my family. So I was taught in my family, the world is a terrible place. It's really scary. Don't venture out too far. Be safe. And oh, by the way, you're not going to be as successful as your brother. So that was like embedded, and I've been fighting that my entire life. Now I'm not fighting it anymore because I don't care, because I've learned how to just let that be there and not worry about it. But that kind of drive to do something, I think, is really important here. Do you find people can learn that?
Yes.
Or is this one of these things you just have or you don't have?
No, I think that skill of rewriting that negative story is totally learnable. Just like I often use the analogy of, imagine walking through a field and the grass is about knee high and you're walking on a path. And that path is your negative thought pattern. And it's entirely possible for you to turn and walk through the grass to take a shortcut or get some shade or some water, but you don't do it. You stay on the path because it's easier.
Yeah.
And that negative mindset loop is simply a well-worn path in your brain's neurology. And with certain skills, with certain abilities, mindfulness, paying attention, maybe it's journaling, maybe it's even just self-awareness, you can change that path. But it requires practice. You know, you're not just immediately going to be able to change those negative thought patterns. It requires a constant reminder. So for me, I wear a bracelet. It's a simple little string bracelet, and that is my reminder to go the positive path. So whenever I start to feel you're fat, you're old, you're ugly, you're out of shape, you're the blah, 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 all the crap that happens, whether you're dealing with business or family or parenting, I remember to look at that bracelet and flip the script as quick as possible. And at first, sometimes a negative event would happen, and it would take me 3 weeks or 3 months to get out of, I can't believe she said that to me. I can't believe she said that to me. I can't believe that happened. And you analyze and you go over constantly the event. And by doing that, your body is actually reliving the negative event chemically. So you're causing more stress, more anxiety, to actually being able to flip that, no, not useful to go there again, and flip it to leaving that thought behind, required years of practice, but it's totally worth it. Totally worth it.
I started doing that process in April of 2011, and it takes a long time. A long time. It's really hard, but I was always motivated to do these kinds of things, and I started probably when I was in my late teens, early 20s, but I didn't know how to do it. So I did a lot of stuff that didn't work. And then in 2011, I found a pathway that actually did start to work, but it took years of dedication and practice to do it. But then the question goes to, how does someone who's stuck in that, but doesn't have the motivation in that moment, who's kind of trapped in their own head, and whatever that means, do that? How do they get motivated to do that work? There's no quick fix. So it's easy to, be succumb to the persuasion tactics of people selling quick coaching fixes all over social media, or quick diet fixes, or whatever the quick fixes that you know isn't going to work after you pay the person.
Right.
So how does somebody get motivated to do it right?
I really don't think there is a way to get motivation. I think you create it through your intentions. So if you intend to be more confident, you intend to be less negative, you intend to have a successful business, I think doing that foundational work of the not to do list and the list of people that you're hanging out with, all of those foundational activities that, if you need the worksheets, please just message me. I'll send you the worksheets. That foundational preparation for stepping into who you're capable of being, I think is so important. And I know I skipped over so many steps in the beginning of that because I was in a rush to get to that final destination of whatever I thought it was. But every time it came back to, you're saying yes to too many things, or you're not delegating, or you're saying yes to the wrong clients. Well, you got to go back to that foundational work of what does my practice look like? What does my business look like? And more importantly, how am I showing up every day? And I think when I think like an athlete, when I think about how I'm going to show up to an event or a speaking engagement or just for a client, if I show up as the best version of myself, nothing else needs to happen. I can just trust that it's going to work out, whether it's a client or whether it's, my parenting or whether it's a friend. I can trust. But where does that come from? That comes from that confidence piece that I've done this before, whether I was 18, 16, 24, doesn't matter. I've trusted in my own abilities before. I was successful before, so I can do it again. And I think that's really the key. I think that's it.
You said something really important, and I think it's my own experience, kind of where I started, which is I made a decision to do that.
Yeah.
And that's all I had to do. I made a decision and I went and did it. And then I kept doing it because I was really motivated because I wanted to I wanted something different, to happen. One of the things you're doing that I'm doing as well is you're surveying the landscape of ideas and pulling from lots of different domains. And I'm doing exactly the same thing all the time. And I'm wondering what you're seeing out there. So one of them you talked about, and this is a whole industry. It's, I don't know what you call it, peak performance coaching. Some people could call it, but this is where, the athletes kind of gravitate. And, there's a whole bunch of people who are expert in this. What did you learn from that part of your background, and how do you see that industry, whatever we want to call it, the coaching piece of it?
I think the number one thing, when I was teaching fitness classes, so I was a semi-pro snowboarder. I was a nationally ranked swimmer when I was very young. And then snowboarding was kind of my sport of choice, late teens, early 20s. And I started teaching fitness classes in my 30s for a hobby. Like, I literally thought, well, if I'm going to be at the gym, I might as well get paid, and I get to be in front of the room motivating other people. That sounds like fun. I can do that. And I discovered the state of flow during exercise. And it is this state that you get to, if you've ever experienced it, it's amazing. Maybe it's runner's high. If you've ever experienced that, that's about the closest I could describe it. But when you get to that state of you're equally challenged and you are coming up to the edge of your abilities, and I noticed something magical, that when I was teaching a very intense spin class, this one first time flow happened. I had had an argument with my then boyfriend, who's now my husband, the day before. And as soon as that state of fitness and ability was challenged, my mind could not do any rumination at all. I couldn't think about the argument. It wasn't even there. It was like this miraculous thing that happened. I couldn't worry about it anymore because I was so in the moment. So it was mindful, it was presence, it was, I'm sweating and I'm talking and my cardio ability was maxed out. And I thought, oh my God, this is the key to being out of rumination, out of negative mind. I need to do this all the time. I need to do this every day. I need to be challenged and I need to be butting up against my abilities. And it was after that I learned to apply that to other areas of my life, whether it was coaching, getting more certifications, learning, whether it was learning technology. I happen to be a SaaS junkie. I love AppSumo. Teach me something. I want to learn. I want to show up and be in that space of, I don't know how to do that. Let me figure it out. And that when you're in that space, you can't possibly be in a negative mindset. So I think, yes, I can teach that to somebody, but they have to be intrigued by that idea. You know, it has to be something interesting to them to, ooh, well, maybe I want to go exercise with Suzanne and see what that's like. And that's where it started for me, is attracting mobs of people to my exercise classes for that very reason.
It's such an important discipline to study for me. It has been. And one of the things I heard on Rich Roll's podcast, who's one of the top kind of coaches and has a really good podcast in this area, was this idea of action. So when you're in this, you can't think your way out of a negative mindset. You act your way out of a negative mindset. And he talked about how to do that on his podcast. Do you find that that's true as well? There's not necessarily a lot of preparation for this stuff. It's like you act and then you do certain things as you're going forward.
I think so. And it could be as simple as changing the state that your body is in. You know, if you feel a negative spiral coming, or a negative event, say a negative event has just happened. And it could be something super simple, like you get a negative comment on social media and you feel, oh God, this is going to ruin my whole day. It's going to ruin this. And you start. Change the state that your body is in. So if you're sitting, stand up. If you're standing, sit down, lay down, get grounded, go outside, get some sunshine, put some music in your ears, and get your mind on a totally different thing so that you can't continue down that spiral.
So before we get to the ROI of confidence, I want to add one more discipline. We could go on and on about all the different places these ideas come from, but one you talk about is ancient wisdom, which is another area that I've been studying extensively the last couple of years. And I'm wondering, what did you learn? What is ancient wisdom? Who are those people, and what have you learned from them?
To me, it's the Stoic philosophers. And I learned about them through a coach of mine, Brian Johnson from Optimize. And one of the things that stuck out to me, that the original, I believe, Plato's Academy was a gym.
A gym?
I was like, it was a gym.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
It was literally a place where his students, Plato's students, would come and learn. And it was like a Greco-Roman wrestling gym. And I was like, what is that about? And then I believe it was Epictetus would take people on learning walks in nature. So his class every week, they would meet and they would go on a walk in nature. And I thought, okay, there's something ancient about this movement and learning. When did we become so static with school and learning? And that was not something that came from ancient wisdom, for sure. So I resonated with it immediately. And then found Ryan Holiday, which if you don't know Ryan Holiday, he has some amazing blogs and a couple books. And I read the book, The Obstacle is the Way. And again, that talks about meeting your challenges, meeting your ability levels and pushing past them. And again, that resonated with me, and that just fueled the desire to know more.
When I read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, one of the things that struck me was that he was in a conflict. So on the one side, he's ordering people to be murdered because he's the Roman emperor and he has to. Like there's no other way around it, or he'd lose his position. But on the other hand, he's talking about being kind and treating people in a certain way. but he was honest about the conflict in himself, and he didn't know how to resolve it, and he struggled with it for a lot of his life. And what I've noticed is then I find other things like Ray Dalio, if people know him here, he's got a good YouTube video about reality-based living, reality-based thinking, his first principle. And it's the same as the Marcus Aurelius. So I'm noticing that all of these, and you read, people like Charlie Munger or Naval Ravikant, and after a while, it's like they're all talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
And then I'm reading things where they say those people, that top 1%, are doing the opposite of what everybody else is doing. They're doing the opposite of what everybody else is doing. So my thought was, let me do the opposite of what everybody else is doing. And I'm wondering what you see in that. Like, so you talked about sort of the, body-based, sort of movement-oriented philosophies, which is also, you see that in every single one of these people. They really do that every day. A guy like Barack Obama, is he too busy to go to the gym?
No.
Of course he is, but he did it anyways every single day. Of course he's too busy. What else do you see as kind of foundational principles people need to know about?
I think the second one for me that I noticed very, very young was stillness. And stillness has had a couple meanings for me when I was younger. I was an only child and very independent, still am. And what I noticed when I was younger was I liked my alone time. That was my creative time. That was my imagination time. And when I really look back now, I can see, well, I was actually being mindful and present, and it was a calming force in my life as a kid, as a teenager, as a young adult, through many of the struggles that I went through in my life. That was always the thing that I came back to. The center, the grounding, the time alone, whether it's journaling, reflection, self-awareness was key for me. So now stillness for me has become part of my practice for myself, and I encourage it with my clients, that time alone, time in reflection, deep thought, self-analyzing, whether that introspective time, most people don't give themselves the time to do that. But when you truly know yourself, when you know not only your strengths, and you're damn aware of your weaknesses, you can show up so much more powerfully. And so stillness, there's a great book called Stillness is Key. I can't remember who wrote it, but it's definitely on my shelf back there, was validating for me that, so me taking a weekend to myself, even though I have a husband and a child and a business, me taking 2 or 3 days to myself once a quarter is not selfish. It's something I need to be me. That was huge for me. And I think totally foundational especially for entrepreneurs.
I love this. And every day I do Tai Chi, which is physical energy opening, and second, I do stillness kind of stuff every single day. And then I learn something new every single day in the morning. So before we get to the ROI of confidence, which I definitely want to make sure we cover, anybody who wants to raise their hand so you can make a comment or ask a question. Just don't pitch anything. Like, it's not a disguised pitch question. It's like, so if you have a real question, great. If you have really something to say because you have experience, let's talk about it. So we'll try to keep track of the order here, because I want to leave 10 minutes or maybe 7 minutes or so for breakout rooms. So you came up with this idea of the ROI of confidence. What does that mean?
To me, I love business strategy, and in order to put a tangible thing on the work that I do, there needs to be an ROI, right? There needs to be a return on your investment of time, because you don't need me to do this work. you could use me to do this work and maybe you'll get there faster, a little easier, but you don't need me to do this work. So what's the ROI look like? What are you going to receive if you do this work for yourself, whether it takes you, 35 years like it's taken me, or whether it takes you 1 year of working with a coach or 5 years, it doesn't matter. It's a state of mind that you're actually looking and striving for. And when you get to that state of being that you're actually in alignment with morals, values, your goals, and everything comes together, there's a confidence there that comes across in your voice, in your presence, in the energy that you walk into a room with, whether it's on Zoom or whether it's in a real live room. So that measurable difference, I think, is really the tangible ROI. How do people feel when I talk or show up or I help them, I serve them? How do those people feel? Well, if I'm not at my highest and best, they're not going to be feeling that energy from me. So for me, that's my ROI. I get to do that.
That's
and
really
that lights
cool.
me up. I love to do that.
Yeah, it's really cool. And you're getting into the law of attraction world and the mindset area. And I think one of the things I hear from you, and I've noticed this too, is the law of attraction stuff. I'm not going to go through it because we don't have time, but that attraction, building that attraction muscle in a way, by being real. So you attract the right people. You're talking about it. It's not coming in your model here from doing the law of attraction stuff, but you're like getting to the same place. It sounds like as opposed to manifestation of the vision and the future. And then,
well, I love all that stuff.
You do that too?
I love the idea of manifesting something. I love the idea of visualizing something. I love the idea of attracting something to me that I want or I desire. But listen, all that airy fairy woo woo stuff, you can do it all. And I have crystals in my bra. I have crystals in my bra and oils on my feet and okay. But it all comes down to you actually have to do the work of increasing your energy, of doing all the things. And it's more than just saying an affirmation every day. It's more than that. And there's almost an intangible piece to it. It's you can't visualize something and have it come to you without doing the work to have it come to you. That's about the best way I can explain it.
Yeah. And that's what Napoleon Hill said in his book, Think and Grow Rich, but people leave that part out.
Yes.
So we have a couple of hands raised here. Patricia, do you know in what order? I couldn't track it. And if you want to spotlight whoever.
Yeah, just a second.
Okay, thanks. Hey, Scott, did you have a comment or a question?
I did, Larry. Suzanne, thanks. Great presentation. You talked about having that your own time to reflect, to do the self-reflection and analysis. And you also talked earlier about how much rumination can be a problem. So how do you guard against and separating, having the line between not ruminating, but doing an honest self-assessment?
Well, Byron Katie, I think, does it best. Her work, called The Work, is very simple. If you're ruminating or you're in a negative space, by journaling or asking yourself, is that true? Is that really true? And going a little deeper within yourself. And I think that's where I start. And if I'm in the negative space, I do have those people that I can reach out to and say, whew, I got some, I'm going to quote somebody on the call, my friend Mason. I got some head trash happening. Can you help me navigate that? So if introspection doesn't work for me, is it true? Is it really true? Then it's really about looking to those other people that I surround myself with, and not in a negative way, not in a, oh my God, poor me, victim, blah, 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 but to remind me of who I am and what I'm capable of. So I have lots of people like that around me.
Thank
That's
you.
great. Does that help?
It does. I liked those questions that you talked about. Does it true? Is it really true? I think that's very helpful. And then I also, you said something very valuable earlier about changing the state of your body when your mind's not in the right place. So thank you for all those tips.
Yeah.
Great.
There's some great activities. It's called the Fountain of Youth. If you Google Fountain of Youth movements, Fountain of Youth exercises, it's a series of qigong and yoga, and it's from ancient Thailand, and it's a series of movements that change the energy flow of your body. And they're very simple movements, but put together, you actually change the energy foundationally of the state of your body, and helps you stay younger and fitter and healthier too.
So let's see, who's next? Mason? I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Suzanne, I just want to acknowledge your heart and your brilliance and speaking this collective wisdom. You're doing awesome. I really appreciate you. And Larry, I just also want to acknowledge you for your clear, on point, and relevant questions. And I think this is great. So thank you both.
Thank you for being here.
Awesome. Sajad, was Sajad next? Or
was, but I was making sure we'd be okay on time.
there we
Hey,
go.
Suzanne,
Yeah, we're good.
Hey.
How are you in the next step of real life?
I love it. My girlfriend is super hot.
Oh, yeah, that's what Larry told
He
me.
keeps getting in trouble for doing that, but I know exactly where he's coming from. So
I
it's
do too.
awesome.
I love it.
Larry told me that. I don't know. Why don't people do better even when they know better?
So we're
Yeah.
talking self-sabotage here. And I would say the number one reason that you're not happy, that you're depressed, you're anxious, is because you're not living up to your potential. You're not living up to who you could be every single day, moment by moment by moment. And I would say that, I think it was Maslow that said that's where anxiety and depression lie, when you know that you should be exercising, drinking water, sleeping, or doing all these things, or doing or being something better than where you're at right now, and you're not doing it. And it's that angel on one shoulder, devil on the other. Yeah, you should be doing it. No, you don't feel like doing it. No, you shouldn't be drinking every night. Yeah, come on, have a beer, and it's the fundamental battle of good and evil. And who are you going to let win?
Okay, how about this one? There's no way to motivate anybody. You can only inspire them. What do you think about that?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, yes. I can't chase my clients around and make them do what I ask them to do. They have to find the motivation within themselves. We could have conversations like this all day long about, motivating, finding energy, creating energy. Yes. But if you don't want to do it, if you're if you're really battling with that self-sabotage, whether it's victim mindset, overachieving, procrastinating, if you're really stuck there, nothing anybody else can do for you is going to get you out of that stuck. So don't believe the hype of sales pages and, you know, things that say they can get you unstuck if you don't want it. If you don't want it, it's not going to happen.
That's great. Thanks, Sajad. Scott, did you have your hand up before, or did you put your hand up again? Or it was already up? Okay, got it. Got it. All right, this is awesome. Thank you so much. We could go on for hours.
I know. I know.
We've had a bunch of these conversations one-on-one.
Yeah.
So what first, thank you for doing this. It's great. And
Thank you.
I know what I wanted to say. So last week we did a workshop with Kevin Gazzara, who I think may be on here. I don't know if he's still on, but about saboteurs. So we broke the room down into people. So you were in a room with people who had the same saboteur.
Oh, that's excellent.
Which was great. Yeah, it was pretty cool. So if anybody's interested in learning more about that, Kevin's a good contact for it, Kevin Gazzara. And it comes from this guy, Shahzad,
Shahzad Charmaine.
Thank you. I always get that wrong. And there's a free assessment where you can find out what your top 2 saboteurs are. And it's really helpful for the self-defeating patterns.
It really is. I send it to every client before I give them that first coaching session. I send a strengths assessment and then Shahzad's saboteur assessment. And I will say that the program he had for coaches, I did it about 2 years ago, and that's 6 weeks I spent, you know, diving into the saboteurs and the sages. For me personally, was a foundational shift in my thinking and my being. And for one of the first times, probably about 3 weeks into that work, I had an experience of stillness in my thoughts. So not negative, not positive, nothing. So there was no to-do list. There was no, I have to do this. I have to achieve this. I actually sat down and did nothing for probably the first time in my career as a coach. Like, to sit down and think nothing.
That's
and
amazing.
What a gift that was.
So I got accepted into his program. He's doing this free thing. It's the same training, but he's giving it away to groups of people. And I put out in my private group, anybody who's interested in going through it with me. And I just got flooded with people who want to do it.
Nice.
Now we have too many people, so we've got to figure out in his system how to do it. So I want to break down quick. We don't have a lot of time into small rooms. So we'll do the room assignments, 2 to 3 people in a room. And it's really simple. It's just find out basic questions like, hey, what are you focused on? Where are you trying to go? What obstacles are holding you back? Ask each other those questions and then connect, and maybe you can help each other out. So that's the idea of the networking. If you don't want to do that, you just want to chat, do that. I don't care. And then we'll bring us back into the main room, and anybody who wants to stay on for 30 minutes can stay on the call.